Hi, everybody, and good afternoon or evening or morning, depending on wherever you are in the world. My name is Mike Entner. I am the Digital Transformation Officer for Entner Consulting Group, and I wanted to take a few minutes to record my thoughts on EV, specifically around what I think it will take for EVs to be successful. And as the subtitle suggests, it's a little bit complicated. So, who said EV isn't profitable? I've heard this from a few folks that have challenged me and said, EV is making money. I disagree. It's not. There's really only one company currently making money on EV, that's Tesla. And they're making it because they were the first mover, they understand the technology, and they've implemented some tech which allows them to roll out vehicles faster, more efficiently, and with better feature sets. That's some of the SDV stuff you've heard me talk about in the past. Most manufacturers are just scraping by on profitability if they're making money at all. They may suggest that they're making money on EV. They're probably not, because of the amount of money that has to be invested just to get going. It's a pretty serious hurdle to jump over. And as evidenced by the current crop of EV companies that are suffering, we've got the Rivians, Lucids, Fiskars of the world, not to mention many others, that are all posting horrible numbers. They can't get the cars out the door, and their stock is definitely reflecting that as it gets into single-digit values. The big OEMs in Europe, United States, and Asia are also attempting to pivot to EV, and the impact on their business really has yet to be seen. There's no profit at all after the expenses, the investment in developing the technology and marketing it and everything else that goes with it. If we're really honest, I doubt they're making 2 to 3% on a vehicle. I mean, I've seen numbers as high as 5, but I question it. So, is there long-term profitability around EV? Yeah, I believe so. At some point, for somebody, maybe if the market conditions are right and we keep moving in a certain direction, depending on what else happens in the world and who else competes. But yeah, there's long-term profitability there, just not right now. So the other thing that I hear is that everybody's all about green. So what's the issue here? It's a no-brainer, the writing's on the wall, blah, blah, blah. You hear it all the time. And I hate to burst that bubble for everybody, but no, not everybody is green. If you want to live in an echo chamber and hear yourself speak or listen to the media, yeah, you're going to hear that green is the top priority for every human being on the planet because they're waiting for the polar ice caps to melt and nobody wants to die. But the reality is that that's not the majority of people out there. They do care about the environment. I mean, people like me, I'm a very practical environmentalist. I maintain property, I grow trees, I minimize my carbon footprint. I don't drive an EV though, and I do care about the environment, but I'm not caught up in the climate anxiety. I'm not worried that the water is going to come to my doorstep tomorrow. And I live in Florida, so that says something because I could have beachfront property now. But being green takes multiple forms, right? There are some forms that are free, like taking a walk instead of driving. And there are others that cost money, like buying solar panels, which people really don't have right now. They're poor. The economy is not going well, contrary to what others might say, and there's a lot of inflation, and stuff's getting expensive. I just talked to a neighbor who put in solar panels. She spent, I believe it was close to $30,000, and the return on investment, it's going to take her 20 to 30 years to make the money back. She won't be in the house that long. So you've really got to look at, what's free and what's versus cost. There's a lot of debate too about whether the supply chain leading up to EVs is really green or ethical. We hear about some of these rare elements that are being mined in the Congo. There are young children mining them. We hear talk about the production process, even making the plastics that go into an EV require fossil fuels. So there's a reality somewhere, although we may have to work hard to get at the truth. But it's leading to a lot of folks saying, well, EV is just one form of conservation, one form of helping the environment. So they're like, nah, I don't really care. And then we also would note that different countries have very different attitudes towards green and renewable energy development. Some need it or want it, and some don't. There are some countries, we see some of the Scandinavian countries very much into renewable energy and going green. But very different, environments that they live in, size of the country, economic condition of the country, attitude of the people, etc. So all this stuff kind of melds together into a, green, how do I say it? Green with varying levels of interest. And so green is not going to drive EV 100%. If we think it does, I think we're wrong. So the other thing I've heard is that we just need to turn the switch from ICE to EV. It's just quick. You just stop doing, fossil fuels and you start doing electrification and it just works. And it doesn't work like that. It's not even just the vehicles themselves. We live in a fossil fuel economy, whether we want to deal with that or not, or accept that or not. And that economy impacts society. It impacts technological development. It's, intricately woven into our daily lives. There's no way to extricate yourself from this web without damaging something or upsetting something. So we have to accept that we are where we are right now. The world is also set up for ICE, internal combustion engines, not EV. And the infrastructure that will support it is going to take decades to establish in any real meaningful form. Yeah, we'll have chargers, and yeah, people will get things at home, and maybe we'll do some things that support EV, but I think it's going to take at least 10 years before we see really significantly the ability to be able to just pull up to an EV charging station and dump fuel in your car, energy into your car within a couple minutes and then drive off. We're just not there yet. It's going to get there. It's just going to take a little bit of time. The only way to move faster in EV is if you dip into the taxpayers' pockets. And what you're going to see there is the creation of animosity against EV. So when you take money away from people to pay for other people that want to do EV from the ones that don't want to do EV, you create animosity and you will deal with the result of that. And it comes in the form of people backlashing against EV. It'll happen. Now, while the fossil fuels are not as efficient as electric, I've seen figures saying that you burn fossil fuel, you get 20% of the energy out of it at the end of the day, versus electric, maybe where you get 90% efficiency. I've seen people say 100. That's not true, but the reality is that electric is very efficient, but it's also not portable. It's not readily obtained without a very decent setup for charging. And it requires additional investment, right? Beyond just signing a contract and walking out with the keys for a vehicle, which we then drive down the street and we can easily fill up with gasoline at the station, right? It's pretty simple. So the last thing to note here too, when we talk about, flipping the switch, EV doesn't work in every use case. If we look at trucks as a very salient example, the consumer grade pickups cannot presently tow for any distance without rapidly depleting the battery. This makes them absolutely useless for a large majority of truck owners. I'm one of them. And in the USA, guess what the top selling vehicle is? It's not a car, it's a truck. And so you have to be very keenly aware of this when you're looking at the monetization around EV. So the other comment that frequently surfaces on the internet and LinkedIn is it's just like pulling off a Band-Aid. We just need to do it, make it happen. Not true. This type of talk, right, about pulling off a Band-Aid, it rings hollow with many consumers. And it's just not the financial reality for many of the people in the world. For example, if you look at what we call the rule of 20, it says that a car should not be more than 20% of the annual income of somebody's total overall income. And with EV, it throws that out the window. If you can find a $20,000 to $30,000 EV that does everything you need it to do, good luck. And it will take a very large chunk of your budget. And with interest rates being as high as they are, you're looking at a decade or more loan at a high interest rate in order to arrive at anything that can fit your budget. And even then, you're breaking the rules here. So you can't force people to get into EV. If you want to mandate it, that's an interesting approach. But essentially now you're taking a very personal decision about switching from a gas vehicle to an electric vehicle, and you're governmentally mandating it, which then again, like I said, creates animosity. It's a transition by force. And now you've got people that just are going to resist no matter what. So the question here is, what's wrong with going slow? And I say, can't we work through a thoughtful transition to EV over time and allow the technologies and the infrastructure and the attitudes to evolve? I think we can. But it just, it depends on how everybody approaches this. And if everybody wants to approach it with, we'll do this by force, we'll mandate it through laws. I'm not sure if that's going to be successful. So we have to remember that going green and reducing our carbon footprint, it's a long process, but we didn't get there overnight, and we're not going to get our way out of that overnight. And we can't legislate our way to, energy freedom. It's just not going to happen. Somebody has to pay for it in the end of the day, at the end of the day, and somebody gets hurt. So there are a number of EV blockers. I always call this the bad stuff around EV. And I think we could go through each and every one of these and debate them and argue them. But in general, these are the high level issues that keep popping up for EV. Number one being a sparse EV infrastructure. We're just not able to support EVs like they need to be supported yet for charging. Some states are better, some countries are better, some municipalities are better. But if you look at overall, 90 to 95% of the world out there is not ready for it. Battery range and durability is continuing to improve. You have vehicles that will do 400 and 500 miles. You've got vehicles that they say the batteries will last up to 10 years, warranted up to 8 or 10 years. This is all great stuff, but we have yet to see how it really shakes out in daily use. We have yet to see what heat and cold and mischarging does to the batteries. We just don't know. The profit margins are very low. So that's going to be a blocker. If you're just an EV only company and you don't have ICE to back you up with a big piggy bank, you could go out of business very quickly and be borrowing a lot of money. You've seen this in the news lately with different companies. There's also a backlash to legislation. I'd mentioned this earlier. When you try to legislate and mandate anything, you can be guaranteed that people will resist and they will not want to do it. And if that's half of your population, you can kiss half of your market goodbye. That is a serious problem. We don't want to go there. If we keep going down that path, it's my opinion that that's going to create a bigger issue. There is a non-existent or low ROI right now on EV. I've run the numbers hundreds of times, and I've tried to say, what if I bought an EV truck? Is it worth it? I would have to own that truck for 20 some years to break even. That's just to break even. And yes, we could look at the environmental impact and everything, but if we're just looking at the numbers, right? And we are talking about a business here. This is not just about feeling good. The numbers don't work out. And they won't work out for a while, I do believe. Range anxiety is real. People are like, well, I can't go 400 miles, and then not have a place to charge up. I'm going to give you half and half on this one. Most of our trips are very short. We could benefit by using an EV and just kind of go, 30 miles at a time or 50 miles at a time, or drive from one place to another and charge up. I mean, that's okay. But nobody wants to run out of juice in the middle of nowhere and have no way to get, fuel to the vehicle. In this case, electrical power. So that's still an issue. And until the charging infrastructure is in place everywhere and convenient and cheap, you're not going to see that go away. Entry-level EV costs are still very high. If we look at countries like China, I saw an article recently, made me laugh a little bit. It showed, China as a canary in the coal mine for the price of ICE vehicles. Let me tell you, I'm still waiting for a G-Wagon in the United States to be available for $5,000 or less. When ICE vehicles are worth nothing, because that's not a reality. If you look at countries like China, they can make the vehicles very cost effectively. They own the entire government. Essentially, they can, do whatever they want with the government there and with legislation. They can say, yeah, we're going to mandate this by tomorrow and everybody has to do it. The people don't have a lot of say in what happens there. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into entry-level costs. And you're going to see companies like Tesla that want to compete in China, they're going to have to drop their price radically. If you look at from an alternative perspective, there are people that always say, hey, why don't we get the Toyota Hilux in the United States? Or why don't we get these cheaper vehicles in the United States that other countries have? There's a reason for that. We have taxes, they call them chicken taxes, that are on these vehicles, so that if you don't manufacture a truck, which remember is the top selling vehicle in the United States, you get a 25% tariff on top of it, which makes your product, basically unmarketable. So the entry-level cost is not going to change till some of those tax structures change, till there's more competition, and until the technology just gets proven. We see supply chain issues continuing from the times of COVID. I don't think it's going to get any easier with all the geopolitical tension going on right now. We'll see what happens there. The only way to really fix that is mine everything you need and make everything you need in one place and build from there. China does have that advantage, everybody, I'll remind you. There will be increased competition, which will then lower the profit margins, but then makes this a little more difficult for some of the existing companies and OEMs. It's a challenge there. There's a lack of a software-defined vehicle platform. Right now, and I've talked about this before, you don't need a software-defined vehicle architecture to deliver EV, but it sure helps. And it would actually be able to allow you to more, let's say, more efficiently show the value of a new vehicle versus just saying, well, you're going to save money on gas. And the SDV platform that I've seen different folks suggesting is just not there. Entner Consulting Group is developing an architecture, fully articulated architecture in this direction, and we'll be unveiling it towards the latter part of the year. Lastly, there are limited vehicle types. I mentioned this earlier. No trucks in the United States is a no-go. We've all been waiting for the Cybertruck. I'm not a big fan. I think it's ugly. I'll just say it. We've been looking at trucks like the Rivian, but $85,000 a pop and not available. Again, a no-go. A sedan is not what I need or care about, and you'll find that's a big situation for many Americans. And I do speak to this as an American. I know Europeans probably have different opinion on this for sure. And the last item here is really dirty components. There are some supporting stories around dirty components, right? What it takes to make these things, what it takes to mine the materials for these things. There's a lot out there. Some of it may be, BS. Some of it may be true, but in reality, we know that this stuff has to come from somewhere. It doesn't come out of thin air, and that there is dirt involved in creating those things. So these are all items that are blocking EVs. There could be more or less. You might agree or not. I just wanted to lay some of these out here. So I think that time is the friend of EV adoption. I think we're just pushing too hard, too fast to get somewhere that we're not really sure we want to get to yet. And the one thing that money can't buy is time. I mean, we just have to let it pass by. And I have a background in theology as well. And one of my studies, we talk about Buddha. Buddha said, middle path. He said, this is the way you go. Follow some way down the middle way. It'll lead you to nirvana. And I agree here. I think that we need to, as an industry, find that middle path and approach these next generation vehicles with a mindset that says, well, can't we use ICE and EV? Make them work together, right, as in a transitional form. And perhaps, and I joke around all the time and say, except their love child, which is the HEV or the hybrid electric vehicle. For example, Ford is selling a hybrid Maverick in the United States. You can't even touch one. They're not even in stock. It's 2-3 years now to order one. That might indicate a good place to make some money. And possibly, Ford might want to examine that. I'm sure as heck would like to look at buying one. So again, while not required for EV, there is time still, I think, to develop a fully articulated software-defined vehicle architecture, which would definitely smooth the transition between the different technologies and prove the value in electrification of the automobile. And I think that more attention needs to be paid to this. There's time to do it. We don't have to rush ahead and just use things like zonal controllers and old tech and CAN buses that can be hacked and everything. There's a new way to go forward with the automobile. What I'm seeing is not it. Then we also know the market will saturate with EV players. It's a low bar to entry now. I mean, people can build EVs at home. I may sound like an exaggeration, but it's true. People are retrofitting vehicles to run them as EVs now. And with additive manufacturing technologies, the ability to print things is going to go a very long way. And I'm, giving you a really, I guess, extreme use case with a home consumer. But essentially, you have folks that want to start companies. They can do it, very low cost, and they'll get out there. It's a great thing for EVs in general because it will lower the cost of EVs. It's bad, though, in that it's a double-edged sword for the OEMs because their profits become highly diluted at that point. So is EV a good option for them or not? Some weird stuff, very contradictory. So I also believe that the infrastructure to support EV will come with time and patience and monetization opportunities. Where we can make money on things, we tend to gravitate towards them. So if we just wait a little bit and let the technology mature for charging and things like that, we'll get there. So to wrap this up, I think that the critical steps for EV success are kind of as follows, and I've worked from these as a roadmap. The first is really non-technical. It's just the industry needs a serious reality check. We have to step outside of this bubble that we're living in and be open to constructive criticism. Is EV the end all be all solution? Maybe. Is it ready right now? I don't know. Should we be open to other ways of doing things? Yeah, why not? I mean, we'll see what bears fruit in the marketplace. And I really think we need to stop demonizing the ICE and making it look like it's some type of evil twin to an EV. It's not. Fossil fuels have gotten us a very long way in our history. They will continue to deliver functionality, capability for us in the near term. And they're also, by the way, paying the bills for EV, because you don't think Ford, GM, or Stellantis are making enough money on EV to have it self-funding, right? They're making money off of their Dodge, their trucks, their SUVs, and all the other stuff they got out there. So don't be delusional about that, and don't demonize ICE. I think it works against us. We need to adopt an open standards, highly extensible and inexpensive next generation automotive architecture that's going to enable real monetizable use cases and deliver value to customers. And I'm not talking about the heated seats thing, right? BMW will never live that one down. But I'm talking about real value delivered to the customer around things like safety, things that they care about. And if you can deliver these next gen vehicles or retrofit existing vehicles, you can kind of get to a good place. I really do believe this number 4 is critical. We need to stop pushing EV via mandate and let the market dictate what it wants and needs at its own pace. If we push too hard here, we will fall down, right? It's what is it? Crawl, walk, run. And we're trying to run, and we're not even done crawling yet. We have to continue developing the critical technologies and solve for those complex use cases. You heard me mention the truck use case. Until you can tow with an electric truck and the battery doesn't die after an hour, you're not going anywhere. And I've tested that in person with my live body in the vehicle. I can tow for about 30 to 40 minutes and the truck's dead. And you can read all types of tips and tricks on how to use an F-150 Lightning to tow more. And people are like, yeah, electrify the trailer too. And I'm like, now we're carrying more batteries in the trailer, batteries in the truck. I mean, it gets to be a little bit silly after a while. We need to solve for those use cases. And who knows what it'll take? It might take different battery technology. It might take a combination of hybrid with gas electric. I don't know, right? But there's some good middle pathway there. And then lastly, we really need to acknowledge the market dynamics of EV and make realistic investments with achievable ROI that respect existing shareholders. You can't just go crazy on EV and destroy the value of a company that people have invested in. It's just going to shake investor confidence, and you're not going to have the money to do what you want to do at the end of the day. I truly believe that. So I hope you found this helpful. I just have a little, I didn't have too many commercials in this presentation, I don't think. But just a word about Entner Consulting. We're a woman-owned, minority-owned business. We believe that, that everybody is basically entitled to a fair shake in life. And we build that into everything that we do. We're a think tank company. We don't really build a product right now, although we might in the very near future. We're more about developing concepts, connecting ideas, prototyping, getting the right people involved, working together to deliver solutions. And we take the environment first. So you see me here talking about EV. I do care about the environment. Like I said, I have 30 acres. I plant it with trees. I have animals. I reduce my carbon footprint. I don't waste. I recycle. I repair everything I have. And I do care about that. And so does our company. And we have a presence in the United States primarily. We're doing work in Europe and Asia as well. And we are developing programming capabilities and development capabilities in Colombia. Doing that as we speak right now. So we look forward to continuing to work with our customers there. So I hope you found this interesting. I did it in the typical one-take style for me. So you get my stuttering and you get my misspeaks and missteps, but I hope you found it interesting, and you'll share this with other people and thoughtfully discuss what you heard. Don't get, polarized, end up on one side of the fence or the other. Just think about what I'm saying and how do we incorporate this into what we're trying to do to make the world a better place and deliver next generation automotive technologies. That's it. Thank you and have a really wonderful weekend.